Hello, folks, and welcome to Sell More Stuff, an e-commerce podcast. Through this series, we're going to be taking you through setting up and launching an e-commerce store, covering things including marketing strategy and implementation to stock control and delivery. If that all sounds good, I'll be your host, John Walker, founder of Venn Digital, an online advertising and e-commerce specialist agency on the stunning north coast of Northern Ireland, where here we're famous for the Giant's Causeway and Bushmills Irish whiskey. In today's episode, we're going to be covering how to get started, and for this we're joined by two amazing guests. First up, fresh off the stage at MozCon in Seattle, we have Andi Jarvis, founder of XMO Marketing. Andi is going to talk us through making the first steps from a marketing perspective and how to write a basic marketing strategy that you can pin to your wall. After Andi, we'll be talking to Colin Christie, founder of Christie's Direct, an e-commerce business based here in Northern Ireland. Colin has been in the e-commerce business for 23 years, so he knows a thing or two about getting it right and what can crop up along the way. First, though, let's hear what Andi has to say. Good morning, Andi Jarvis. You are the founder and strategy director of XMO Marketing, based in Belfast and Liverpool, but lovely home down in Bangor, where the sensible sun seems to be shining this morning.
Thanks very much for having me, John. The sun always shines here. The Gold Coast, I believe. I never call it, but some people do. But that probably tells you more about Bangor than anything else, doesn't it? But no, thanks for having me on the show.
Thanks for coming along. So how are you? How was MozCon?
I am fantastic. Thank you very much. It's I've come out of the summer's a really quiet time for me. So this time of year, I always feel great. It's wonderful, well rested. Everything's going well. You know, just had to kick off. Ask me again in 2 months, and I'll be like, "Oh, I'm just tired. I need a break. I really need everything to slow down a little bit." But MozCon was great. It's if you don't know what MozCon is, it's one of the bigger marketing events, digital marketing events in the world. It takes place in Seattle, and I thought I'd had a spam email when I got an email saying, "Do you want to come and speak at the conference?" I was like, "Is that for me?" But no, it was good. Went really, really well. Seattle's a lovely place. Pacific time, which is 8 hours behind UK time, is brutal. It's brutal. It's awful to come back from. But other than that, it was lovely. We had a great time.
Very good, very good. So tell me about where XMO Marketing and Andi Jarvis is now.
Well, we do strategy, which I kind of try and keep it simple, and then I can peel the layers off the onion and explain a bit more at a time. So marketing strategy is what I do. I tend to do that with companies that are going through a certain point in time. So often they're launching a new product, or their sales are going down, or somebody else has taken over and the sales need to go up. Instead of by the 3% that they were, they need to go up by 10% or 15% or, something along those lines. So that's broadly when marketing strategy gets looked at, and people are like, "Yeah, what do you mean by marketing strategy?" And in very simple terms, I always say the strategy is where you're going, the tactics are how you're going to get there. So marketing strategy is about setting that direction of who you're targeting, why are they going to buy from you, what problem are you solving for them, what thing are you going to solve this year, that sort of thing, the bigger questions you ask, and then the tactics are how you're going to get there. I do help some clients set their tactics. I don't do their tactics, though. I am not the person to ask if you want your Facebook ads doing. Or can you build us a website? No, I can't. And I can't manage your social media. Well, I could. I mean, I can do all of these things just really, really badly. So you wouldn't ever pay me to do that. So it's more about what's the direction that we want to go, how we're going to get there, and then what do we measure along the way to make that happen.
Okay, very good. Talking about social media, how's your TikTok going?
It still has 2 videos on it in 16 months, I think. One of them was described as the worst TikTok in history by Aoife, who I worked with at the time. So, TikTok, me and TikTok, not necessarily friends, unfortunately. But if you are using TikTok, my number one bit of advice is to hit it as hard as you can now, really, really quickly. So I don't know if you saw recently, they announced they are banning external e-commerce links on TikTok. So if you want to sell some stuff on TikTok, you have to link to a TikTok shop, which, is fine, right? I can understand why TikTok are doing that. But if you look at the playbook for big platforms that Facebook kind of mastered, it is grow a platform, make it essential to everyone's lives, and then monetize the hell out of it. Now, TikTok have done the first two stages and they've burnt a lot of money doing that. So what are they going to do? They're going to monetize it. What does that mean? I think it's going to mean what Facebook did, which is that they're going to kill organic reach for certain things. Who's that going to be for? Businesses. And you're going to have to pay to play. I think that's probably going to come in the next 12 to 18 months would be my complete guess. I'm not going to say it's got any insight into that. I'd say it's a complete guess. But if you are on TikTok or if you're just starting on TikTok, there is still massive, massive organic reach to be had from creating videos that focus on your product. So if you're not using it, consider it. We might talk about what you should be thinking about before you make that decision. But if you are using it, I would kick the backside out of it as hard as you can for the next couple of months before that goes away.
Very good. So, Sell More Stuff, an e-commerce podcasts, episode 1, we're largely focusing on how to get started. So, steps people take. I'm speaking to Colin Christie, Christie's Direct, more largely known just as Christie's now. And he's going to tell us from a business owner's perspective what he went through when starting up in e-commerce. But from yourself, Andy, talking to businesses and just general advice, whether you're starting your first e-commerce store or you're just getting ready to launch a new product, what would be your strategy for getting that going?
So for me, the first thing I say to any company of any size, and this wouldn't matter whether you are multi-billion or whether you are yet to sell anything, but my best bit of advice to anyone is talk to your customers, right? Like get chatting to them as quickly as you can, understand them. And when I say talk to your customers, I probably should rephrase that as listen to your customers. So ask them questions, open questions, and listen to what they say. Don't ask them questions like, would you buy this product? How much would you pay for this product? Do you like this product? Because they're kind of leading questions. What you needed to find out is what problems they have and how you can, and what solutions they are looking for to solve those problems, and then find yourself a place in that world. Now, that's easy to say, but if you're starting out, you might not necessarily have customers. You know, if you're bricks and mortar and you're moving into online, you can talk to people who are walking through the door, right? And at least get a bit of an understanding of them. But if you're starting out with an online business and you've never done this before, that is a little different then, because you're like, well, where do I find these people? And the mistake most people make is the 3 Fs, I think it's known. And before you start thinking, oh no, we're going to get banned for the swear filter, the 3 Fs are friends, family, and fools. They're the 3 people you should never ask. By and large, most of your friends want you to do well. And if they don't want you to do well, they're probably not your friends, right? So if you go to them and say, look, I've got this new product that I'm going to start selling online, what do you think? What do they all tell you? It's the best product in the world, John. John, honestly, you're going to make a killing. This time next year, Rodney will be millionaires. Perfect. This is going to be a success. Then you're at a family gathering, you're at a christening or something like that, and you're like, oh, I'm just about to launch this new product. John, that sounds fantastic. Love what you're doing. Pat on the back. You turn around and walk off, and they're like, I don't know what he's doing. That lad's he's lost the run of himself. No one's going to buy that at that price. But they don't tell you. They just tell your uncle instead, right? And then fools, well, you probably guess why you don't ask them. But you get this network bubble, and it's meant from a really positive place. Everybody wants you to do well. So they just want to tell you nice things. Unfortunately, then the rubber hits the road. You start selling it. You invest in a website, you invest in ads, and you wait for the sales to come in. And guess how many you sell? Nothing. So it becomes a bit of a problem. So my key bit of advice then to roll back is define who you want to sell to, and find a way to go and talk to those people. Now, you and I both know when you say to people, who do you think could buy this product? And what's the first answer you hear? Everybody. You're like, oh. Just because everyone has money doesn't mean that everyone does buy your product. Even products that everybody use, like water, you don't necessarily have all the customers, but I'll bore you with that another time. So start to refine it. So if you are, so you're on the North Coast of Northern Ireland, you're a business that sells like beautiful coastal prints of Northern Ireland, right? Anyone realistically who visits the North Coast or who is from the North Coast or who has relatives there 3 generations ago, they're now living in Detroit, but their family was born on the North Coast, all might buy one of your prints. But realistically, who are going to be the ones who are going to keep buying them and turning the money over so the business keeps running? And you might go through your head and you might start to go, well, look, that feels like it's going to be tourists and day trippers and people. And how old are they? Well, it's probably the ones with a higher disposable income, not necessarily the teenagers coming to go to Barry's or Curry's or whatever the fair's called these days. So it's going to be kind of slightly older, probably 35 to 60, who are still buying stuff for new houses, that type of thing, coming on day trips. Right. Okay. So now you start to get this. Now, where can I go and find these people? You go on the North Coast on a sunny day and start asking them questions, or, Facebook groups where people are, and start just trying to find your customers and just start to get some feedback from them. And that's a really simple, cost-effective way of starting to just clarify your idea. If nothing else, you will hear words and phrases they use that are going to be really important for you to include on your website or on your social content. And it should just give you that confidence that you're on the right track. And if you're on the wrong track, it's a really cheap way to just do a little course correction before you get too far down the line.
Very good. You're kind of talking about using social proof there, from talking people on the street, almost vox pops moments for people thinking of traditional media, just going up to people on the street. Do you like this print? This print's the best thing I've seen ever.
Yeah, and it's great to hear natural language, because one of the hardest things, marketers get kicked a lot for using too much jargon and too much rubbish when they're talking and when they're writing. But every industry has that. It's not just marketers. Every industry you go in, people slip into talking into the language of the industry. It just happens. And you will in your business as well. So whether you're making prints, whether you're making stuff for animals, whether you're making consumer products, whatever it is, there'll be a language of that industry. And it's really easy to fall into using that language all the time. So even just having that vox pop moment with a couple of customers, and they'll call it, you call it an acrylic on leather print, right? Wonderful. How many people are actually using the phrase acrylic on leather print? They're looking at a beautiful picture of the North Coast. Oh, is that what people are searching for? Yeah, I don't even know if acrylic on leather is a thing, right? But you're with me anyway, right? It probably is somewhere. But do you know what I mean? You're convinced that the way you're making it is the different thing, but actually what people really want is a picture of the North Coast. So that's the market you have to be selling to. So it's just about understanding your customers in that way and just getting those little bits of natural language that can make all the difference on your social content, on your website, and when you're selling to people.
Yeah, that's very true. I've definitely seen a trend lately where customers are stuck on their own language. So that's an excellent tip there, just to bring that down, bring it down to your customer's level is probably the straightforward way of putting that, thinking about it. And
customers are wanting to buy something to fulfill a need that they have. The need they have is rarely, I need to be made to feel stupid by this business. Very rarely is that the need, unless you're an escape room, right? That's probably the only business I can think of where the need to make your customer feel inferior and stupid is really, really important. And possibly some specialist brothels, maybe, I'm not entirely sure. But generally speaking, there's not many businesses where making your customer feel stupid and inferior is a good thing. So let's not make it easy for them to work with you, make it easy for them to deal with you, and just, go with that.
Okay, so now in theory, we know roughly who our customers are, and we know what it is they're talking about whenever they're talking about products like yours. How would you take it from there?
Marketing strategy. I think it's important to have one. And most small businesses do have one. They just often sit between the ears of the owner of the business, right? And that's fine when you're working on your own. But if you ever have someone else working with you, someone else helping out on a stall on a day, I think it's important to have it written down. But it's dead simple. And for most small businesses can fit on one sheet of paper, right? Just on that sheet of paper, just write, who am I targeting? And then list kind of the 2 or 3 key customers you're going to be targeting. So, it could be, women over the age of 40, or depends what the product is, right? But you'll know that. And demographic targeting for most consumer products is still fairly robust. I'm not talking about having to go away and doing, like proper research like Coca-Cola would do. Just have a bit of a focus on, this is the sort of thing these are the sorts of people I'm going to target. You probably only want 2 or 3 target customers. Anything more than that, and it just gets a bit messy. Why are they going to buy from you? So the target customer, why are they going to buy from you? It'll remind them of their holiday. It'll solve this need or whatever. What are your targets for the year? So how many of these things are you going to sell, or how much money do you want to make, or what profit margin? The targets and the objectives always have something that's got a currency in it, pound sign, euro sign, dollar sign, whatever. That's always an important marker, and everything else spins off that. And then the fourth thing, not always is relevant for every business, but what problem is it you're trying to solve this year? So if you're when we're talking about getting started, this could be a business that already exists, but launching a new product. So the big problem you have that year is launching something that you are not known for. Whereas if you're, so that's the challenge you need to have. How do you raise awareness of product B without losing sales for product A? That's a slightly different challenge to launching something from scratch. So answer those 4 questions on one sheet of paper, stick it up on the wall behind you, right? If you're listening rather than watching, I'm pointing at the wall behind me, but put it up on the wall where you can see it every single day. And that's the marketing strategy. It's there. That's what you're focused on. And then the next thing I would do is I would have a list of the tactics I'm going to do. What social channels am I going to be on? My top tip for small businesses is pick a smaller number and do them really, really well, rather than going, right, we've got to be on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, X, whatever it's called, Threads, at Pinterest, and we've got to do all of these. Plus, we need to blog every week, and we need to create videos for YouTube, and we need to do it. It's like, oh, do you know what? You're never going to do any of that. Who are you targeting? Your target audience is, 20 to 25-year-old male and female, 20 to 25. Brilliant. TikTok, Instagram, go for that. And that's where you are. So pick a small number of channels you're going to go for and really focus on what are you going to do for them across the year. If a year is too much of a long period of time, what are you going to do over the quarter? And then you can break that quarter down into weekly activity. So you know your strategy, and then you know what you're going to do on a week-by-week basis. And do you know what the important thing is? Do it, right? Have a smaller plan that you do relentlessly and you never miss, rather than a bigger plan that you only do on a half-assed way and you're a bit like, I didn't have time to do that this week, didn't have time to do it next week. I'm a marketing strategist. But if you don't do the delivery, strategy just becomes a really expensive, really useless piece of paper. So the difference between strategy becoming a success and becoming a failure is getting shit done, right? Or getting stuff sold, to bring it back to the name of the podcast. So, having a smaller plan that says, right, we're going to post on TikTok every single day, and we're going to do X, Y, and Z with it. And once a week, we're going to create a longer form video, put it on YouTube, and we're going to put that on the site as a blog. That's going to be our whole marketing plan for the next 6 months, right? Do that relentlessly and never miss is better than saying, we're going to do Facebook ads, we're going to do this, 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 and then doing none of them. Just one caveat to that, as I'm talking generally, ads almost certainly need to be part of what you're going to do if you're launching a business. I can struggle to find an example of a company that I shouldn't say you need to use some ads to do that. Whether that's ads on Amazon, ads on Facebook, ads on TikTok, wherever, you could always talk to, a local business like Venn Digital who could maybe help with that. But I would always suggest that you do ads to get it off the ground. You will just reach more people faster.
And you almost leaned towards your catchphrase there, but you generally avoided it. So I'm going to let you take the opportunity to say it now.
Oh, I've got several catchphrases now. You put me on the spot. So I've got talk to your customers, which I've used. You've got everyone is not your customer. Which one?
You're not your customer.
Oh, you are. Oh, John, I'm sorry. Let's edit that one out. No, it's fine. I think I kind of talked around that in several different ways, but just thank you for opening the door for me to go into that one. We kind of touched on it with that using other people's language rather than your own language, but the hardest thing is to remember is that you are not your customer. So you care about it, especially in small businesses, but it happens everywhere, right? You make your product, you've invested in it, you've spent money on this instead of going on holiday, or you've stopped doing something to focus on it. You're giving up your weekends to run a stall, to sell it, right? You're investing time, money, energy into this. You love this thing, right? You are not your customer. Your customer just will not care about it in the way you care about it. And you have to get comfortable with that. It doesn't mean that they don't care about your product. They just don't care about it like you do. So stop trying to do things that will sell to you, because your customers are never going to care about it in the way you do. So that's what getting close to your customers does. Talk to them, and you'll then understand what matters to them instead of what matters to you.
Thanks very much. The other way I was going to link with that one personally was in terms of when you're coming up with a strategy, looking at where, and you did touch on this already, but where you're going to market. Typically, whenever I talk to businesses, like, have you considered email marketing? They're like, oh, no, I don't really like email marketing myself, so we're not going to do it. And you're sitting going, but you sell hundreds of customers, you have an e-commerce product with upsells, you just don't want to do email marketing, which is probably one of the cheapest forms of repeat marketing.
Have you ever worked with an e-commerce business where email hasn't been their best performing channel?
I have, but it's always definitely about 10% plus, and it's, in terms of cost effectiveness, it's one of the best for sure. I think the last time someone properly challenged me on, why am I paying for this service, in terms of what they were paying for their actual email marketing provider. And I just pulled up the stats and I just turned the screen around and they looked at it for about 2 seconds and went, fine.
That's why I'm paying for it. Look, email is, so a lot of small businesses often have strangely high customer acquisition costs. Now, it might not necessarily look like that in Facebook. If you're doing Facebook ads, the customer acquisition cost always looks about okay. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing that channel. But a lot of small businesses get a lot of single sales. Depending on what you're selling, repeat business isn't necessarily a huge thing. It depends on the product, right? But a lot of businesses will sell one product, which means you're always looking for new customers all the time. So having that email data and being able to contact those people and trying to reduce that cost and say, look, do you know what? Here's the thing you bought. You might be due a new one, or why not refer a friend? Or it's come up to Christmas. Why not buy another one for someone else? Those things are just great ways of keeping that door open. There's effort in it, but there's effort in all of these things. I think the one thing that a lot of small businesses look for is this silver bullet, right? What's the one thing that's it doesn't exist, right? It does not exist. Yeah, you can throw money at ads. That's probably the closest to it. And once you've got data, you could probably invest in email. That's another good thing. But realistically, it's just about, it's consistency, it's showing up, it's doing it, it's delivering it. That's the important stuff, and making sure that you're doing it right. And if it's not working, when you do your strategy review every quarter, you'll be like, right, okay, we're going to dial down the Instagram because it's not working, but we're going to double the time we're spending in TikTok because that is delivering. Right, okay, off we go, and keep going.
Very good. We're running a little short in time here, so I'm going to go with the last question, which I think if you run a podcast and don't ask this question, you're not really running a podcast. And would you recommend a book for business owners to read when it comes to marketing strategy or just starting a business in general?
That's a really good question. And not because I'm not used to answering it, but a lot of marketing books are aimed at really big businesses. So like how brands grow and stuff like that. It's all about fast-moving consumer goods stuff. I think I'm going to sort of answer your question, but by not recommending a book, by recommending a TED Talk. Start With Why by Simon Sinek, right? It's actually a really, really, really important video to watch. It's about 14 minutes long about how you change your messaging and you stop talking about features and start talking about advantages and benefits. The reason I'm not recommending the book is I watched the TED Talk and was like, this makes a lot of sense. I bought the book and I read it. I actually think it's a really terrible book. The reason why it's a terrible book is that all the concepts are in the 14-minute video, and the book is then padded out just to make so many extra words so they can sell it as a book rather than a blog. So I don't actually like the book. I actually think it's a bit of a waste of time. But the video, it's not that the concept's not good. It's just the way the book is padded just annoys me. But the video Start With Why, 14 minutes of Simon Sinek, and it goes right back to what I was saying about using customer language and talking about the thing that they get from it instead of the thing that you want to tell them about the product. So I think that's a really useful one and fairly easy to implement for small business owners on social content, on written content, on your website, even the way you talk to customers if you're selling stuff in person, I think can all be influenced by that video. So I would say that watch that, and it saves you don't even have to buy the book, then saves you the money. Just watch it on YouTube.
It's a great example. I think the classic one is Apple iPod versus the Zune was the classic example from that one. Excellent one. That's one I used to. We managed to get through the entire podcast without bashing on a certain fried chicken restaurant. So
I know a fried chicken restaurant that's close to my heart as well. Just every time I look for an example of somebody who's cocked something up, you see how I managed to get cocked in there while talking about chicken. Every time I look for an example of someone who's cocked something up, it always happens to be a certain fried chicken restaurant from Kentucky. Can't remember what it's called though. Just in case their solicitors are listening. But we haven't given them a kick in yet. But their chicken is fantastic usually.
Look, Andy, thanks very much for coming on.
Not a problem. Thank you for having me.
It's been great, and hopefully catch you soon.
No problem. Thanks, John. All the best, man.
All right. Good. Thanks to Andy for taking us through how to avoid the 3 Fs, about marketing strategy and how to plan for getting set up, the use of the golden circle from Simon Sinek, and of course our ever-loving favourite fried chicken restaurant. Now we're going to turn to Colin, who is, as I said before, an e-commerce business owner. He's been in e-commerce for 23 years. He spoke at multiple events and he runs the business day to day, so he knows the ins from outs. Let's go and see what he has to say about how to get started.
Colin, thanks for coming on the show today. For those of us tuning in, this is Mr. Colin Christie, the founder of Christie's Direct, where I had the good opportunity to work for over 5 years as part of the e-commerce team. Colin, thanks for coming on today.
Nice to be here. Thanks for the invitation. Appreciate that. And those were a good 5 years that you worked here, and certainly we both learned a lot from those experiences, and it stood us in good stead to get us to where we are now. So yeah, thank you for that.
In some cases. So how are things with yourself and Christie's currently?
Yeah, I mean, things here are relatively good. Obviously, maybe for those that don't know, Christie's Direct sell primarily pet grooming products. So that's our specialism, and that has been for the last sort of 25 years. And we sell pet grooming products to groomers, to breeders, and also obviously to you as the pet owner. We also make sure that the customer is aware of how to use the products properly. And so a lot of our emphasis is on training and education and knowledge for the user of the product, let that be you with your dog or a professional groomer. Business-wise, at the minute, it's pretty good. Obviously, through lockdown and those last madness that was those 2 years, our business increased greatly, but we're still trading ahead of those. We're well ahead of 2019, and we're now ahead of last year, which is a good position to be. Traffic to the site is probably down a little bit, but our average order values are up and our conversion rates are up. So we're still seeing that incremental growth in sales. And obviously there's still challenges out there, obviously with the increased cost of PPC, increased shipping costs. Those all factor into the overall profitability, but we're in a reasonably good place, and we're looking now to expand more into Europe and sort of grow our presence there in mainland Europe.
Okay. And I think it's fair to say, just touching on the topic of COVID and 2019 e-commerce figures, if you look at statistics overall in e-commerce, things took a massive boom. And a lot of businesses now are seeing a downwards trend in comparison to those kind of that 3 year period. But if we look back at where projections were for 2022, 2023 and beyond, going back pre-COVID, we're at what we're actually at is the point where we would have been if COVID not happened. So for anyone that's comparing to 1 or 2 years ago and being my sales figures are well down, it's actually growth compared to where you would have been previously. So it can be a hard knock for those who existed. For those who are just starting out, they don't have that worrying curve in their sales charts.
No, exactly. But we've been really in e-commerce since the year 2000. So 23 years we've been in e-commerce, albeit at a fairly low level when we started off 23 years ago. But still, we've seen that over that last 20 years, certainly, we've seen that just upward trend every year in e-commerce. As you know, our business was built around telesales and catalog sales, and we've seen the decline in those channels in the business, and obviously the increase in e-com. But I think it's, as you say, businesses that come into e-commerce late, they get a real how would you say it, push forward during COVID. It was a great time to launch an e-commerce business. There was lots of people online, lots of people searching. They were in lockdown, they had nothing really else to do. So there was a lot of eyes in your sites as well then. And that's probably, for us, it was a learning curve. I suppose up until 2020, our business, we thought, was geared mostly around professional groomers and breeders and vets, as in a more B2B. But with the lockdown in 2020 and 2021, we saw obviously a huge spike in pet owners wanting to groom their dogs. Maybe the groomers were closed, they couldn't get the dog groomed. And what we have found is that as of, currently, probably about over 20%, probably about 25% of our current customers do not classify themselves as groomers. So they're obviously just pet owners, or people that maybe groom their own dogs or their neighbours' dogs or family dogs or whatever. So they obviously do it because they enjoy it and it's a hobby. So I think out of lockdown, there's this new customer base certainly has been created for us. And it's like every challenge in business, there's always an opportunity during a challenge. I think when things are going well, that's when you tend to get a lot of that lazier and complacent. But when times are tougher, that's when you try to look for opportunities which stand you in good stead coming out the other side of any challenges. And business it's full of successes and failures, and challenges. If you can run your business in such a way that you can maximize those opportunities, then you have a successful business.
Yeah, I think I mentioned earlier there the trial by fire during my time there. It's evidence. You underwent stress, but what was formed afterwards, it's like the old adage about the coal and the diamond. It's the same stuff. It's just the pressure that makes the diamond versus the coal, and it's just how you deal with things. So to talk today, Colin, we are here to talk about starting up an e-commerce site. So obviously you've been in the game a long time. I know from experience that you've re-platformed a couple of times. So looking back at whenever you were first starting, going between the catalog and telesales to online business, what were the important things you needed to know? And you probably had more experience than a lot of people who are starting their e-commerce journey today by having the catalog and telesales. But what was the point that led you to be like, I need this, and this information to make this work?
Yeah, I think, for me, for this business, it was initially, and I'm talking 20 years ago here, we saw e-commerce as just an extension, another catalog. It was another way of selling product. We probably didn't see the growth and the opportunity that has obviously transpired in the last 20 years. But I think, I have this saying that, customers will always forget what they bought from you, but they will never forget how they felt when they had that experience. So customer experience to us is almost now as important. People talk about customer service, but we look at it as customer experience. And customer service really only matters when a customer has an issue. It may be a late delivery, damaged delivery, short, whatever the problem is, and they have to contact you, and it's how you rectify that, and that can give them a good experience. But, in our business, probably over 95% of orders that go out never have an issue. But how are those customers feeling? And it's difficult to do that online. When the customer's phoning you up, you can say, hello, how are you? How's business? Just have general chit chat, and you get a relationship going there for that few minutes that you're on the phone, and people see there's a real person. I think when you're going out online, people do need to see that there's real people behind your business. Your About Us page needs to be important. You're obviously looking at your market and saying, well, is there actually a market for my product or service? Who's doing it? How good are they? And if there is a market there, where can I be better than them? Because it can't always be on price. And I think, John, with the experience in our business, we never were the cheapest. but we always try to give the best service to the customer. And I think that's important. So you've got to figure out, is your proposition based around value, or is it based around service? And the value one is a really hard one to capture because, with the growth of Amazon and these other marketplaces, price can be a race to the bottom. And the one thing I would say about e-commerce is, look at the margins on your product and look at what your prospective marketing costs will be. Look at what it will cost. It's a basic spreadsheet, and there will be a lot of, for people starting out, there is a bit of, we would say, finger in the air calculations, but at least have a go at doing those calculations, because that's when you realize, am I going to actually make money at this? Is this going to work for me? Am I going to make any money when I've created this site with really nice products, merchandise it really well, and people are buying the product, but I'm making any money on the bottom line? And that is the crucial part, because there's an increase now in shipping costs, whether you ship yourself or you ask another third party to do the logistics. There's still inherent costs in there, and we'd all love products with 85% margin, but there's not that many of them out there. We're all working on 50, 45, 50, 60%. When you take your costs out, is there anything left at the bottom? Because if you don't have that bottom line, you can never grow, because you're needing that profit to reinvest in the business, either in new lines or updating your website or hiring staff or all those costs. So the key thing is, do they want the product? Can I sell it at a fair price? And what's my bottom line like? Those would be my three key points.
Was there anything that took you by surprise when you first started? Like, it's something you haven't taken into consideration that make users aware of?
I think, yeah. I mean, it's really over the last sort of 10 years that we have a CFO here, and it's really since they've come in, an in-house CFO. We've always had an exterior accountant, and we've always had our accounts done. But it's when you actually get into the visibility of what it really costs to run a business, when you count up everything and you apply that to the margin that you're making on your products when you sell them. That is the one thing that really takes you by surprise. It's actually, I'm ending up with 10%. So if I sell something at £100 a day, my net profit is going to be £10.
Yeah.
And, at that level, and that's, in an e-commerce business, that's probably thereabouts 10 to 15%. But, you don't go too mad on cost to wipe that out and be in a negative situation. So not one specific thing, but I just think the overall cost base of the business is the one thing that really took me by surprise when I actually dealt. And that's really within the last 10 years. Up until that, we got our yearly accounts. We were making money, everything was good, but and we were in a position that we could invest more money into the business, but we also maybe weren't the most efficient as well. I mean, we could have probably been more efficient, but it's that balance between efficiency and investing for growth, because to invest for growth, you are going to make mistakes and you're going to do off the wall stuff that might work and it might not. And I suppose now as I get older, I take more calculated risks than I did when I was a bit younger. It was throw it against the wall and see what sticks, but it's certainly not that way now. And I think that, businesses starting out maybe can't afford to do that now. It's just your overheads are so much higher as a percentage of your turnover.
Talking around that subject, I'm going to flip a question that a lot of clients ask me, and you'll be very familiar with this one. What percentage or figure would you attribute towards marketing costs whenever you start? What should someone say for marketing when they're getting kicked off?
And you're meaning, total marketing costs, like as in the team plus, Google spend or whatever, yeah?
Say they're setting up their ads for the first time, whatever platform for, what should they allow for that marketing?
Yeah, I mean, I think you've got to be looking at 10 to 15% at least, probably higher than that. It depends. I mean, obviously it depends the type of product you have, and it's going back to that, the market that you're working in and who's your competitors. If you're up against the big guys, then you've really got to look at your product mix and decide, well, I'm not going to compete against, say, Tesco, to use it. There are other supermarkets are available, on this product, because they're always going to beat me. because they've got the buying power. But there may be something that people are looking for, and the numbers aren't significant enough for the big boys to pick up on it. But it's it's a niche within a niche. As the Americans talk about niches within niches, and that's what you want to aim for. But I would have said 10 to 20% of your sales should be going back into marketing. That's how it would be here currently, anyways. Yeah.
Okay. Very good. It's always interesting to hear someone else answer that question for a change, because it's usually me on the spot.
Did I do all right in that answer, John? Did I?
That's a point, right? There is no magic answer for that one. That you would typically hear people say around 10%, and it's a good guideline. As you say, it just depends on the business itself. So
probably. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and it probably depends on your market as well. If you're trying to establish a new brand, it's probably going to be in year 20. And if it's a brand that's out there and you just want to grow it, then 10 to 15 is going to do it. But there is no magic number. It's a number, but it's still part of your cost base. So you still got to look at your bottom line. That's the key part. What can I allocate to marketing? But as a minimum, it needs to be 10. Absolutely, yeah.
And what then, whenever we talk about going to market, obviously we launch our shiny new website. What would be the next thing you would do after you launch the website in terms of marketing it?
Well, I think for me, it's obviously, if you have decent PPC experience, you can work through that and just see where you're really trying to evaluate where your traffic is coming from. I mean, that's the key part. It could be social, it could be PPC, it could be organic traffic coming through, and that could have a lot to do with your SEO optimization on your site. But I would not count myself a PPC expert. So I had people, like yourself and outside agencies either in the business or assisting the business to get us that information. I could read the information when it arrived, but I think it's important that you look at where your traffic's coming from, and you keep an eye on your competitors. I think that's the other key part as well, is watching your competitors. What are they doing? That don't be scared to copy them if you can do it better, but don't copy them for the sake of copying, because copying someone, you're always a step behind, right? And what? Here we've always tried to be a step ahead of the opposition rather than a step behind. But if someone's doing something that you feel is working, then take that and make it better for the customer. It's all about the customer.
I think it leads back to one of the times I was down in Google when I was working with yourself, and Google gave us a marketing lesson they'd actually learned from Guinness, where they said if you are aiming for copying your competitor, you're only ever aiming for the silver medal. And you should always take your competitor into consideration. If you want the gold, you have to do that something a bit extra special. And I think that leans exactly into what you're saying there.
And I think, we'd be the largest sort of pet grooming supplier now in the UK, one of the largest in Europe, and when you were working here, we were probably second or third in the UK. So we were always watching our competitors, but we always felt we could do it better. Well, that was from a customer service side, a value proposition side. We were never trying to be the cheapest, but we were trying to say, look, you buy this product because it performs better, or you'll get a better backup from us if it was a product with a warranty. We're always trying to differentiate yourself. If it's only on price, you're never going to do that. Not as a startup. Potentially you can do that when you've got, momentum behind you in the business, but not as a startup.
I think one of my favorite parables about launching a new product comes actually from Greggs. A bit of a weird one for those, if anyone's listening outside the UK. Greggs is a pastry shop that's famous for its sausage rolls and similar things. So they launched a few years ago a vegan sausage roll for the first time ever. And instead of copying other food suppliers in the launch, they actually mimicked the launch of the first iPhone. And at the time, and it's still talked about today, obviously, because I mentioned it, but it was one of the most successful kind of marketing campaigns. And once again, they didn't copy their competitor. They just looked at the brilliant example and brought that into a world of their own. And I think that's something we always try to do as well whenever I was in house. I think one of my other things, any of the guys that remember me, or those days will remember, I used to walk around saying, "Be more Burger King," because Burger King weren't always necessarily set on selling their own product in a very direct way. Some of the classic examples from Burger King was they had an app where to get an offer, you had to go and take a picture of a McDonald's poster. And when you did that, the picture on your phone would burn and reveal a discount code for your nearest Burger King.
Yeah.
It was just clever things like that. But once again, that's where it comes into the creativity. And that's not something necessarily for a startup, but it's just an example of how
yeah. And I think it's the other thing is, if you're creating a business online, or let it be, a multi-brand business or your one brand, your business is your brand. That your brand is non-negotiable. Whatever your brand, think about what is the key differentiators in your brand compared to what's out there. And those, you should write those 3 or 4 points down, and those should be stuck on your wall somewhere. And you look at those every day and say, this is what we stand for, and this is what we believe. And the power of brand, as we know, you mentioned Burger King, you mentioned Greg's. You look at Apple, say as an example. They change the color of the iPhone and people are queuing up to buy it. It's the same phone exactly, but it's a different color, so it must be good. But Apple have spent years, developing that brand that inherently the product is good. They stand behind their product. It works. Everything's right about the brand. So anyone starting off, your branding is so important. And obviously your branding needs to relate to your customer base. You really not with a brand. You're not trying to create customers. You're trying to create raving fans, as we call them. That there's Apple aficionados out there, and I'd probably be one of them that. They bring out a new iPad and I want to buy it because it's a new iPad. It's got a faster processor. There's absolutely nothing wrong with a 5-year-old iPad, but people want to buy it because it's Apple and because of the brand story behind it and everything that Apple has done to build it up. And they work incredibly hard at that. And everyone uses Apple, but when you actually start to study it, they work incredibly hard at it, probably as hard as any brand. And Coca-Cola is another brand. Like the amount they spend on advertising, everyone knows Coca-Cola. But, there's a few brand values that they have, and they will never, there's certain things Apple would never do because it wouldn't fit their brand. So you need to figure out what your brand means to the customer and then get those really devoted customers to follow you. And whether you do that through social or whatever way you do it, live events, pop-up shops, just kind of local events, whatever that looks like, always remember your brand is your child. Your child, I should say. So treat it with respect and train it well.
If you had one piece of advice for someone getting ready to start an e-commerce store, what would it be?
Make sure that people want your product.
Very good. Very good.
Because you might think it's great and you might think it's the greatest thing and people will buy this. Do your research. Give product away, let people test it. See if there's a demand there, because that's where most businesses fail. And not enough people buy their product.
Last question. What book would you recommend for someone getting started in business, either in e-commerce or just business in general?
So it's a very slim book. It's a book called Eat the Frog by Brian Tracy. And it's about, and it's really, I think it's really applicable to, entrepreneurs, startups, that type of thing. And the principle is the worst thing that you have to do today, you do it first thing in the morning. And you will have a more. And it's basically, someone said to you tomorrow, John, you've got to eat a live frog. You should eat them at 9 o'clock. Because with entrepreneurs, we don't have a team that we can delegate the rough stuff to. If you have an awkward conversation with someone, if someone isn't working out and you know that it's a conversation, you have to let them go or whatever, do that first thing in the morning. Because the problem is it plays in your mind all day and your productivity for that day goes right down. Once you've that worst task done in the day, the relief and the feeling that you get, irrespective of how that conversation went, is amazing. And Eat the Frog by Brian Tracy.
Sounds like a good book. It also sounds like a powerful avoid 9 a.m. Calls to the manager's office.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, and it was a book recommended to me. It's a very short read. It's 40 or 50 pages, but it just sums that up completely. And if you want to be really super productive, do the hard stuff first.
Very good. Colin, thanks for coming on today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Thanks for your time.
And thank you to Colin Christie for taking us through his experience the past 23 years running an e-commerce store, what he's learned along the way, what he would do if he was starting one today, and how to eat the frog. If you enjoyed today's episode, we're going to be back next month with an episode about the essentials, where we're going to be talking to two experts on things to get right during the setup of the website. We're going to be speaking once again to an expert in the field and to a business owner who's went through the experience of setting up an online store and just providing their opinion on it. See you all soon.